All right, buckle up, because we are diving headfirst into a story that's overflowing with political drama. You know, the kind that would make even the most intense financial thriller blush. We've got mysteries, legal battles, and a showdown brewing in Jamaica between none other than Prime Minister Andrew Holness and the country's Integrity Commission.
And what makes this case so fascinating, so gripping, is that it's not just another run-of-the-mill political scandal. This one cuts deep. It delves into the very core of how governments operate, how they're overseen, and those crucial individual rights, the ones we hold so dear, and the inevitable clash that happens when these two worlds collide.
You hit the nail on the head. We're talking a mountain of paperwork here. Court documents, official reports, you name it. And our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to untangle this web, to break it down so that everyone understands what's really happening beneath the surface. So where do we even begin to unpack something of this magnitude?
Well, you have to start at the heart of it all, right?
Sure.
And at the heart of this story is that truly explosive report dropped by Jamaica's Integrity Commission, the IC as it's often called. Their job, in a nutshell, is to be the watchdog, keeping a close eye on public officials, making sure everything is above board, no shady business going on. But in this report, well, let's just say they're waving some pretty big red flags about Prime Minister Holness and his financial dealings.
And this isn't just a gentle warning shot. They're throwing around terms like illicit enrichment, which basically translates to, we think you might have a lot more money than you can explain.
Exactly, and it all traces back to Holness's financial disclosures, the ones from 2021. Now, to be fair, he filed them on time, which is important, but something about those numbers, well, let's just say it set off some alarm bells for the investigators.
Yeah, the director of investigations, Kevon Stevenson, he didn't mince words. He called out this unexplained growth in Holness's assets, almost $2 million in just 1 year. And we're not talking about finding a $20 bill on the sidewalk here. This is a significant chunk of change. And then there were these massive deposits and withdrawals, hundreds of millions of dollars just flowing through companies that have ties to Holness. It's enough to make anyone wonder what's really going on behind the curtain.
And here's where things get even more interesting, even more complex. See, this unexplained growth, it doesn't automatically equal guilt, right? It doesn't mean he's done something wrong. However, it does raise some serious questions about where exactly these funds came from, which is, of course, what the IC is trying to get to the bottom of. And as if that wasn't enough, there were also questions swirling about potential tax issues, discrepancies, and how funds related to a charity, one that Holness is involved with, were being managed. It all just kind of snowballed from there, and eventually the investigators, they had to widen their scope. They started digging into his financial records all the way back to 2019, going all the way through to 2023.
So not exactly smooth sailing for the Prime Minister. It all sounds pretty serious. But how has Holness responded to these accusations? I mean, what's his side of the story?
Well, that's where things take a very, let's just say, dramatic turn. Holness isn't just sitting back and taking it. He's come out swinging, denying everything, and launching a full-on, no-holds-barred legal counterattack. Oh yeah, he's pushing back hard. And one of his main arguments, well, he's claiming that this whole thing is a witch hunt. Plain and simple.
A witch hunt, huh?
Yeah, politically motivated, designed to take him down a notch or two, tarnish his reputation. He's adamant about that.
So it's not just about the money itself, but the whole political game surrounding it.
Precisely. And, he's pointed to the timing of when that report dropped, right before a major political event, as evidence. He's suggesting it was a calculated move, you see.
I see. So there's this extra layer of intrigue, trying to decipher if it's really about uncovering wrongdoing or if there's a hidden agenda at play.
Right, and this isn't something new in Jamaican politics either. There's a history there, a bit of a tangled web, really, of institutions getting caught in the crossfire of political battles, which just adds another layer of complexity.
Okay, so it's not just about Holness and his finances. It's about the Integrity Commission itself, its role, its history, its potential biases. It's a lot to unpack.
Exactly. It's bigger than just one man or one report. But Holness, he isn't stopping there. He's also challenging how the investigation was carried out, claiming the commission went too far, overstepped its boundaries.
How so?
Well, he claims the report was unnecessarily invasive, airing out private financial details, stuff that, in his view, should never have seen the light of day. He sees it as a violation of his privacy.
Ah, so it becomes a transparency versus privacy debate as well then.
Exactly. That's another layer to this whole thing. But it goes even deeper. Holness isn't just making noise in the public. He's taking it a step further. He's challenging the very law the actual law that the Integrity Commission used to investigate him.
Now, that's interesting. He's saying a key part of the Corruption Prevention Act, the one they used against him, is unconstitutional.
That's the core of his argument, yes. He's saying that this specific provision, it flips the script, essentially putting the burden of proof on public officials to explain their wealth.
So instead of the commission having to prove wrongdoing, he has to prove he's innocent.
Exactly. It's like instead of innocent until proven guilty, he has to prove he acquired his wealth fairly from the get-go.
I can see how that would rub someone the wrong way. Yeah. But what's the logic behind that provision in the first place?
Well, the argument goes that it's a vital tool for fighting corruption, especially in cases like this where there's a lot of unexplained wealth. It's tough to prove illicit enrichment without this kind of legal mechanism.
So it's about giving the Integrity Commission more teeth, so to speak, the power to really dig in and expose corruption, even when it's hidden behind layers of financial complexity.
Exactly. But of course, critics, and Holness is among them, argue that it undermines basic legal rights, that it could be twisted to target political opponents unfairly. So you see, it's this very delicate balancing act, this tightrope walk between ensuring accountability and protecting individual rights.
A tightrope walk indeed. And this case really throws that balancing act into the spotlight. But Holness, he's not just complaining about it, he's taking action.
Absolutely. He's not backing down. Holness, along with several companies he's connected to, they've gone ahead and filed a formal application with Jamaica's Supreme Court. They're seeking a judicial review of the whole Integrity Commission report.
Okay, for those of us who aren't legal experts, break that down. What does that actually mean? What are they hoping to achieve with this judicial review?
It's a bold move, no doubt. Basically, they're asking the court to step in, take a close look at everything the Integrity Commission did, and make a judgment. They want the court to declare parts of that Corruption Prevention Act we talked about, they want it declared unconstitutional.
So they want to invalidate the very foundation of the investigation.
Essentially. And they're not stopping there. They want the report thrown out, the investigations halted, the whole 9 yards. And get this, Holness is also seeking damages from the commission, claiming a breach of his privacy. He wants them held accountable.
Wow, so the stakes are incredibly high. We're not just talking about a slap on the wrist. This could have major, long-lasting implications. This must be sending shock waves through Jamaican politics.
You're absolutely right. This case is like a political earthquake, shaking everything up. You've got passionate voices on both sides, deeply entrenched in their positions.
So it's dividing the nation?
You could say that. Holness's party, the Jamaica Labor Party, they're rallying around him, calling this whole investigation a sham, a blatant attempt to discredit him, purely politically motivated.
And what about the opposition? How are they responding to all of this?
For them, this is it, the smoking gun they've been waiting for,
Yeah.
Proof positive of corruption within the government. They're calling for Holness to step down, at least while the investigations are ongoing, demanding full transparency, the whole 9 yards. And they're quick to point out that Holness isn't the only one under the microscope here.
You're right. The Integrity Commission's report named 8 lawmakers in total who are currently being investigated for illicit enrichment. So this goes beyond just Holness, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It highlights a potential systemic issue, and that just magnifies the weight of this whole case. It's not just about one man's finances anymore. It's about public trust, about the balance of power, the integrity of the justice system, the very rule of law in Jamaica.
It sounds like this whole situation is a powder keg, and we're all just watching to see which way the sparks will fly. It really does feel like we're sitting on a powder keg here, just waiting for the fuse to run out. So let's talk about those sparks, those potential outcomes. What happens if this goes one way or the other? What kind of impact are we looking at?
You're right. The possible outcomes here are huge, and it's not just about Holness and his political future. This could reverberate throughout the entire system. For example, imagine the court sides with Holness, even if it's just partially. Well, that could seriously weaken the Integrity Commission, undercut their authority. It's a precedent, right? And not a good one. Makes it harder for them to go after powerful people in the future.
It's like they're supposed to be the watchdog, but now their teeth have been pulled.
Exactly. But on the flip side, if the court upholds the commission's findings, backs up their right to investigate like this, well, that's a major victory for transparency, for the fight against corruption, the whole 9 yards.
It sends a message, loud and clear, that no one, not even the Prime Minister, is above the law.
Absolutely. And that message, that resonates beyond Jamaica. That sends ripples out to countries all over the world that are grappling with these same issues, corruption, accountability, how to hold their leaders accountable.
So we've covered a lot, really dug into this case. But for our listeners, someone who might be thinking, okay, this is some intense stuff going down in Jamaica, but what does it have to do with me? What's the takeaway here?
That's the question, isn't it? Why should we care? Well, even though this is unfolding in Jamaica, it gets at something much bigger. It shines a light on those universal themes, the ones that are always there, lurking beneath the surface: power, accountability, how individual rights and the need for transparency in government, how those two sometimes clash. These are issues that every single democracy all around the world has to deal with.
It's a reminder that for a democracy to work, to truly function, it has to strike this delicate balance. You need transparency, accountability to keep power in check, but you also can't trample on individual rights and freedoms.
Exactly. In this case, it throws that balancing act into sharp relief. Makes us ask ourselves some tough questions. How far is too far when it comes to pursuing transparency? Where do we draw the line, that line between a legitimate investigation and overreach? Where does it cross over into infringing on individual rights? And who gets to decide where that line is?
Those are the million-dollar questions, aren't they? And there are no easy answers, but they are questions that affect all of us, regardless of where we live. This case, this whole situation in Jamaica, it's just one example of how these questions play out in the real world on a global stage.
It really highlights how important it is to have strong institutions, independent institutions that can hold those in power accountable, but do it while upholding the rule of law, while protecting individual rights. It's a delicate dance for sure.
A delicate dance, that's a good way to put it. It's complex, it's messy, but it's something we need to pay attention to. Because at the end of the day, this fight for transparency, for accountability, for a just balance of power, it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process, and it requires all of us to stay informed, stay engaged.
Well said. In this case in Jamaica, this story is far from over. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here.
Absolutely. And we'll be here to break it all down for you every step of the way. Until then, keep digging deeper, keep asking those tough questions.